Good afternoon. My guest this afternoon is Michael Sherlock. He was probably better known as Sherlock, and he was on the vanguard of the Irish pub scene in Boston. Good afternoon, Michael. How are you doing?
Great, John. How are you?
Good, very good. Thank you. So, Michael, tell us this. What made you decide to emigrate to Boston?
Well, I'd just graduated from London University and I got a teaching job which paid about, in today's currency, probably about $25 a week. It was hardly enough money to survive, so I knew that America was a much better place, and I was then decided to immigrate. But then I met a wonderful American woman who was studying at University of Aston Villa in Birmingham. She was studying Shakespeare, and I was a Shakespeare fan, and so we met at a Shakespeare concert, or not a concert, a lecture. And her shoe went into the grass outside the place we were, and I kind of lifted her out. And we married a year later.
Lovely, lovely. Great stuff, Michael. So, tell me this, were there any Irish pubs here when you arrived?
I have to be kind and say yes, but there were imitation Irish pubs. The Sligo Bar, Pat's Bar and Grill, the Galway House, which was owned by Italians. Not really. I wouldn't call it. No, not really. No Irish music in the pubs, no Guinness, no harp, nothing like that.
So tell me this then, what was the first pub you became involved with, and what input did you have in running and managing them?
For a number of years, I was in the insurance business downtown Boston. We had an office at One Washington Mall near City Hall, and someone opened a bar near Faneuil Hall called the Black Rose. And I knew the people who were running it. And I have to be kind here, John. They had a vision of Ireland that was, I'm not sure, I can't even describe it. The bartender had his pants legs rolled up to his knees. He wore an Irish cap, dressed in green. The waitresses all had weird looking outfits, all Irish things. Someone's vision of 16th century Ireland. And I put a bet with the owner that he wouldn't be open after 3 weeks. And I won the bet. And they were gone. So Phil Sweeney, Phil was a bartender there, Phil somehow managed to get the owners and the investors to let him run the place. And so I used to go there for a pint almost every day. So one day I said to Phil, "You're exhausted, Phil. Give me the keys. I'll close up here tonight." Well, he said, "I'd love that because you're an Irishman. You're able to deal with these people who come in. I'm not Irish. He was from Lynn, I think. And I'd love to have you here." So that's how the Black Rose began.
Lovely.
Took it over, basically, and went from minuscule income to fairly substantial income over the years.
Right. And did you introduce the music and stuff like that?
We did. Yeah. But now this is an interesting thing. There was a bar up the road around the corner, a very famous one called Clark's, and they were Irish Americans. And they came down one night and they started laughing at Shea Walker and Johnny Baggin, real traditional Irish musicians from Dublin who were the backbone of Irish music. They thought it was hilarious.
Would you just briefly describe Shea and Johnny?
It's impossible to try.
There's
It's
people
impossible to describe Shea or Johnny. They were classical. They were classical, traditional Irish musicians who knew more songs than I ever could imagine. A lot of Dublin songs, inner city songs. Had liked the pint, which was okay with me, but they did sessions more at the beginning. It was just fabulous music, and you would get your heart going. But these other guys, they thought it was hilarious. They thought it was funny. Not funny, funny ridicule. I'm talking about not funny. They were really curious. And I said, "Watch out. You'll see you'll make it here." And a year later, I think they were not laughing anymore.
So, you know,
We
like
got, John,
the
let me just finish. We got enormous publicity after about 6 months. I was a publicist. I worked at that time. I'd worked in television and radio as well here in Boston with GBH. So I knew how to deal with the papers, the press, and we get tons of free publicity, which helped build the bar up into what it became. Yeah.
excellent. So I know you have one story about the Black Rose when Thin Lizzy were touring out here. I think in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to relate that one?
Not just Lizzy. I can't, if I could remember the names of the groups, it all became famous eventually. I even at a later stage, U2 came into the. But that I could go on forever. Obviously, I can go on forever with stories because there's one a day, a story a day.
That's right.
Tin Lizzy, Phil Lynott, right? Phil, as everybody or might know or might not know, was Anglo African. Or Irish African man, charming, beautiful man with a wonderful Irish accent, Dublin accent, and we had a lot of Southie guys who's come into the bar at that time. The nice guys, but I saw Phil go to the bar and using an Irish way of ordering a pint. Just, what? I said, now you know. So, but then Phil and I got together. We talked a lot because there was a lot of free time in the bars from say 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. No, Phil was there with me, shooting shit about everything. You can edit that. So he gave me a lot of his lyrics, copies and songs, and gave me a lot of shirts and hats that he had for publicity. I don't know what happened to them. I wish I had them now, but he, if you will recall, one of his albums, later albums, was called Roisin Dubh.
That's right.
Which is the Irish word for Black Rose. And that's how it goes. He loved the name. When I told him the story of what the rose meant, I did the poem for him. Because it was in the back of the bar, there's a version of the Black Rose in Irish on the wall on big print. So I read it to him. He didn't know Irish, but I did. So I read him and told him the meaning of it in one of his songs.
That's a great story. That was
Yeah.
So. You know, after that, I think there was a time where it seemed like you were involved in almost every Irish pub that was opening up. So there's a story there. Like, how did you went? You know, how did that all evolve? Because, like, almost, first of all, tell us all the bars, the pubs that you were involved in.
Well, the Black Rose, and then obviously. I saw all the money there was made in these bars, and I was only getting a little manager's job. So I wanted to open my own place. So there was another bar around the corner. There was a rundown place, and I used to go over there once in a while to look at it, and I'd see 4 customers or 3 customers, and it was from the 30s maybe, called John's. And then I got to know the owner, and I said, "Would you be interested in selling?" And he said, "Yes, I would." I said, "Great." So then we talked a bit more, and then I think he was a very sharp old man. He checked me out, and he knew that I'd done a lot of good work in the Black Rose and a lot of publicity, and he really knew me. He said one day, "I think you're a film star around here, because everybody knows you, Michael." Right? I said, "No, I'm not. I'm just customers." So then I think he got greedy, and he offered me 25%. I said, "Oh, great." However, as soon as the cash started coming in, the midnight court, the big hand went in, and there was no 25% for Michael. So, but that's an interesting story there, because I wrote out 250 names on a piece of paper to name this new place, not John's. I changed the lighting inside to a little more subtle lighting. I got some Irish photographs and pictures up on the walls to make it more Irish looking, and we went to change the name, Midnight Court, and somebody got, oh yeah, the very last name I wrote down, 251st name, was Midnight Court, that's it, because of all the lawyers around the city. And then I was going to have a room in there called the Legal Pad. that didn't happen. But it's just imagination at work, John. There's nothing more than that. Just trying to be creative. And then I had read The Midnight Court at GBH with 3 other people. We did a production called The Midnight Court, which, by the way, John Healy, if people will know who he was one of the great Irish Times writers, journalists. He was in Boston at the time and he had it on radio. And his comment was, I hear the Midnight Court has been performed over the radio waves of Boston. Regrettably, it has never been done in Ireland. Perhaps it's too raw for our pious ears. That's a good comment.
Yeah.
And a good one. Because it's true, it's raw. Don't go reading the Midnight Court because I said it's raw. Just before we get away from the Midnight Court, I'd like to say, when we opened that first, all the windows are broken along the street. There was a disaster. There was the beers and stuff in the place were like 20th century, 19th century. I changed it. Went down on my hands and knees for 4 days and scrubbed every place. Changed all the beer taps, put new beer chests in, and in 6 months, it was booming. One good story though, I changed the glasses from 12 ounces to 11 ounces for beer. And the only person I had for 3 or 4 nights was a homeless man. And he was coming in, and then he came in one night and he said, there's something wrong here. I said, what's wrong, John? He said, that's not the same glass you had last week. He recognized that I dropped him from 12 to 11. And that's a positive fact. I mean, I couldn't believe that a guy could distinguish.
You weren't going to get one by him.
Not even a good dog would figure that one out. So then, moving on from there, because I didn't get the piece that I was offered, I decided to try and open another place. And we found a site called, on Battery Mart Street, which is another rundown place. It had been a bar earlier called The Other Place, but the guy had gone away and left it there. But a disaster, so we had to clean all that out and cost a lot of money. I got a partner there, who shall be nameless, because I don't think he wanted his name involved, but neither would I. But we opened a bar called Limericks, and that has nothing to do with the state or the county of Limerick. It has to do with political limericks, is what I found, and I had 7 or 8 of them on the walls. They were all about politics and finance, because that's where the bar was located, in financial district again. And that became a success. The only problem we had with that was we couldn't get a vent because the office next door was a printing company, and they'd use the vent for exhaust from the printing. And that was a bad move on our part. But we thought we could handle it. They wouldn't let us put a vent out the wall outside because the smoke would go up into the office buildings. But it survived. It's still going. It's changed. I think it's changed the name, but it's still currently a bar.
It was a very vibrant.
It was very vibrant bar. We had a lot of people come there. We had a couple of the TV anchors in Boston come down and drink.
Yeah.
We had the mayor who's come there once in a while. And I tell this story there because it's a good one about my wino, or not wino, I hate to use the word wino. My homeless man used to sleep on the vent outside. And I got to know him every night after I leave at 2 o'clock in the morning, especially if it was cold. I would check him out and see he was okay. So one night, the mayor came down he was doing some business with the firefighters, and they came in for a pint. And he said to me, who's that man? Get him out of here. I said, you get him out of here. He's not bothering me. So the mayor said, call the ambulance. I said, no, you call the ambulance. Go ahead, you're the mayor. So he called the ambulance. I said, Frank won't go with you, Mayor. He's a very independent man. So the ambulance came, the mayor was there, and Frank was gone into the night. I said, I told you so.
So not only did you know the customers,
Yeah.
but you knew the people outside as well.
But here's the grand story about this. About 2 months later, the Super Bowl was on. And a bunch of Irish guys had just come over for Christmas. I think mostly graduate kids or whatever, or looking for a job. They hadn't gone home. So I said to them, do you know anything about American football? Because the Super Bowl is coming up. So I said, no, it's a good game. It's a terrible game. But soccer guys. I said, well, yeah, but you're here now. What if you could learn something about the game? Oh, yeah, okay. So I went out to Frank. I said, Frank, did you play? Frank was a homeless man. I I said, did you play football in high school, Frank? He said, I did. I said, would you be interested in doing a little job for me? I'd love to, Michael. I said, would you like to teach some kids about American football? Oh my God, he said. So I got him a big sheet of paper, made him some sandwiches and coffee, brought him into the restaurant, put him on a table, brought all these guys over. 2 hours later, I'll tell you, those Irish kids knew more about American football than most Americans. And Frank up into the night again. Frank, it's a great story because it's a one-on-one story. It's one where you reach out to someone and give them some dignity.
Yeah.
And that's what we do with that. That's my great story about the Midnight Court. Now about the Limericks.
Okay, Michael, so we're going to move on now to Mr. Dooleys. And let's, just before we do that, we'll describe the area a little bit. It was well known in the 80s as a sort of a punk area. It had Cantones and a couple of other clubs there. And it was a little bit of a funky neighbourhood to go into. So it was probably challenging to try and get an Irish pub going in that atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk about that now?
Yeah, and right next door there's a gypsy family living in the house next door. There was one of the things about that area down there was a bar called Chickies. And Chickies was a real run-down bikie club. So John Summers approached me about opening a bar with him. And he said, look, we looked at about 10 places. I said, John, I know the exact spot where you're going to be. We go to Chickies. He said, she won't sell. I said, let's see. So we went and we said, would you be interested in selling? I heard she was interested in selling. So she said, yeah, I would. So we made her an offer. She would accept it. She wanted 25,000 more. I said, Chickie. And I did this for John, because I was a great negotiator, because I'd been around, you know what I mean? I said, John, tell you what, Kitty, we'll give you the amount you're looking for, I'll give you $5,000 a year for 5 years. She said, done. Just like it. Well, that was just the beginning of the trouble. Then we had to do it over, because the place was a mess. Live wires everywhere. So we pulled down the ceilings and everything. I pulled down one of the panels of the ceiling and I found a pocketbook up there from 15 years prior with credit cards and everything in it. We found a woman in New Jersey who had been robbed, obviously, and whoever stole put up over the ceiling. We found bullet holes everywhere. I mean, it's impossible to describe what the place was like. A dump.
It was, I remember.
But we cleaned it up, and I'd say within a year again, it was booming.
Unbelievable.
Booming.
It was.
Booming. We got great. One of the things I think we did and was we hired city kids from Dublin and also Galway or Cork to work the bars because they knew how to deal with people.
Yeah.
I'm not just sliding country guys. The country guys were more shy. But these Dublin guys, they didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
They were great people behind the bar.
It was definitely, it was a transformation from what was there prior to it, I remember.
Yeah.
So, you know, characters in Dooleys.
Oh.
Does any one stand out? I know there probably 20 or 30 stand out. But before we go on, people probably don't know how that name came about.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, Mr. Dooley was created by, actually, I believe he was a man from Bridgewater, Mass. And I usually miss his name up. Peter Finlay Dunn was a journalist who had moved to Chicago and had, at a very young age, become editor of either the Chicago Tribune or the Sun. I'm not sure which paper. Maybe both. We'll move from one to the other. But he was writing scathing articles about the condition of the workers in the meat industry, and it was brutal. If you ever read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, you'll know what I'm talking about. You might come home at night and your house is gone because you didn't do something you're supposed to do. They owned the houses these people lived in, the meat people. They'd actually demolish your house. So it was a brutal time. So Don was writing about these conditions about the Irish and Polish people who were working there. And then the owners of the papers were approached by the owners of these meat places, and if this man doesn't stop, we'll stop advertising with you. Threats. So Don said, okay. So he changed his name. He didn't change his name. He changed the location. I'm sorry. He did change his name to Mr. Dooley, writing out of Martin Dooley's Tavern on Archie Road in Chicago. And he wrote with an Irish accent. So nobody, the big powers, could not understand what he was saying. But the Irish guys told the Polish guys what he was saying, because they explained it. And so he became famous. Roosevelt used to wait for his articles every week, okay, just President Roosevelt, because he loved what the man was writing about. But he wrote like something like this. Trust everybody but cut the cards, like an Irishman from Galway would say. Trust everybody but cut the cards. Politics ain't beanbag. You hear that every day now from politics. There's some fantastic sayings. And when he writes about wars, he's talking about the generals, G-I-N-I-R-S, and that kind of, but very down to earth and very real. Okay, even though written with it, like a countryman at home. That's what.
We had some.
He wrote 7 books. Dooley did, Dunn did, and became rather famous for. And so then, why do we name it Mr. Dooleys? I was just sick and tired of the fancy names of bars around town, me included. So let's call it a tavern. A tavern. Bring back the tavern, tavern. So then I thought, what's a good Mr. Dooleys? What a great name. And we got all the great sayings of Dooley in the bar, which we did, and that's how it happened. So, Mr. Dooleys, one of the things we did, funny things with Dooleys. I think it was 1992, the election was coming up, and so I got this idea of having an elephant and a donkey on the street outside to represent the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, right? So we got I don't know how we got the donkey, but we got a donkey. Then I think we eventually found an elephant, and then we had Uncle Sam on stilts outside. So that evening, that was Friday, all everything was arranged, and the election, they were going to be on the street on Monday, up and down the street, telling people to vote, the elephant and the donkey. So one of the journalists came in to Dooleys, and I said, we can't get a stick of publicity for this. This is a big thing, getting Uncle Sam out there with the donkey, and then just then, Barton and Sir Michael must be on the phone. So I went to the phone and said, Jesus, there they go again. These friggin' animal people. They want a vet out there. And the journalist, what? What do you say? I got a full page next day about the vets. So we had to hire a vet, right, as a result. Right? That's how we got the publicity. No publicity without the vet, but as soon as I mentioned animals, got a big article in the Globe. Right, and so there had all five stations in the city were there the following Tuesday, TV stations. You learn something about publicity when that occurs,
Yeah. So Michael, just before we leave Dooleys, let's talk about the legendary sessions that were held there with Alan Loughnane and Shay.
Johnny.
And Johnny, yes, of course, yeah. So do you want to...
It's hard. John is very hard to describe. This is symphonic quality music. People say diddly-eye music. It's not diddly-eye music. It's just as powerful as Boston Symphony, because these guys were specialists at what they did. I heard Johnny one night with a few extra drinks in more than he should have. He did the Hills of Green Moor on his banjo and sang it note perfect to the last verse of the song, because somebody asked them to do it, and they were very generous when someone asked them to do a song. They would do whatever they could to do it. So one night we'd come back in with my friend, he was from Kiev actually, in Ukraine, but he was teaching in Northeastern. He was head of the arts department in Northeastern, and he'd brought Irish groups over, the theatre groups, to Northeastern. But he came in with me to Dooleys, and John was there with Shay and Johnny and Alan. And Johnny had one too many.
Johnny Cunningham.
Yes, one too many, because that's how he relaxed. He would go on tour and then come into me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and spend the whole afternoon having libations of various sizes and shapes. But I went to Johnny at about midnight, and he was mostly out of it. I said, John, I have a great friend here from Kiev, and he'd love to hear you say, because I told him how good you were. And I know you wrote a piece for your father's funeral, and I said, it's very haunting. Could you do it? He barely was able to pick up that violin, but then there was 150 people on the bar at the time, at least. Within 10 seconds, you could hear a pin drop. Don't tell me this man wasn't a great musician. He was extraordinary. He captured that room in 10 seconds with a couple of strokes of a drunken violin. And I have no problem with the drunkenness because it was perfection.
Tone, yeah.
Tone, yeah.
He had a very
And
sweet
my
tone.
friend said, oh my God, he said, what an extraordinary man.
Yeah, I think he had, he just had an extraordinary tone.
Yeah, regrettably passed away playing music in New York, where he was doing concerts in New York with a heart attack. Very sad. At 50. Yeah.
So let's move on to the Green Dragon. How did the name come about, Michael?
After about 30 days or 2 months working at the Boston Historical Society, they have a nice library in Faneuil Hall, and I was just looking at pubs in that area for a couple of 100 years. Do you know there was 100 pubs between High Street and Faneuil Hall in 1776? 100. There was a Revere House. There was all kinds of wonderful places, and one of them was called the Green Dragon. It was over on Marshall Street, I think it is. So I researched a bit more, and I found out that's where the Tea Party met to throw the tea into the harbour in 1763 or whatever it was. And they dressed up as Mohicans. Okay, and so we decided we'd call it the Green Dragon. But now, where the Green Dragon is now is about 30 feet away from where the original one was demolished. The original one is where the Holocaust Memorial is, in front of Union Oyster House. But we decided, why not call it the same thing and just create history here? So how did we do? The opening night, we got some publicity guys, and we said, let's have a little party. So we got people dressed up as Minutemen and the horses, and they rode into town and shot up the sheriff. And we had it was an incredibly great event, the opening of the Green Dragon, because it was like 1776 all over again. And they came from all over to watch it. So that created a huge publicity thing for us. We started right off the bat and making money. Start where?
So you were saying that there was a reggae band came in?
Called Tropical Fire, and the leader of the band, they were very nice guys, they were really into the Irish scene too. So I said to the leader of the band one day, hey, why don't we put some of these Irish tunes to reggae music? He said, let's do it. So I wanted to do that so badly, and I never got around to it. Maybe somebody else will do it, pick it up. I did Galway Bay, the reggae.
So, Michael, here's something probably a lot of people don't know about you. You were involved with WGBH at one time. Mm-hmm. So, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it was 1976. I was involved with the TV first. We did a show called The Club once a week, and I was co-host of the show. And we set up in a bar. I don't know why they did that, but they set up in a bar. And we had a bartender, and I sit in the bar and interview people. I met the most fantastic characters. Patriots guys used to come in. One of the guys, I think Russ Francis was not a quarterback, tight end, like 6'5" or something. He'd come in and sit with me at the bar and shoot the shit about life. We had professors from Harvard. We had all kinds of things going on there. But one of the great nights was when Liam O'Murrough, who was from Irish Television, came over to do a show, and he used the studio that I used. And he was the cameramen were mostly Irish guys, and I can't remember their names now, but they were wonderful guys. So when Liam came out into the show, he came on nice blue suit and big red handkerchief. Both of us. I started talking. I had an Irish audience there as well, and the camera said, "How does that guy do it? Can we not get a guy like that over here to do a show here? A bit of life." And it was a fantastic show. We interviewed a lot of people, Irish people, and brought them in to interview and stuff. And then when I went back to Dublin, Liam invited me to his show. So we were on there as well, talking about Ireland, America. So then, that was tea. Then when that was going on, I was also doing some radio for a program called The Spider's Web, which is about children telling stories. And we went on from there to do with Valerie Henderson. She was a producer, a great English woman. She was a lovely lady, and she produced a lot of Irish stuff. We did a lot of poetry and stories, and poetry and music, poetry and jazz in some cases. And I invited a lot of poets who came over, Eileen Cullinan, John Montague, Seamus Heaney. I invited them all on the show to talk about their poems.
Very nice.
So that went on for about 4 years.
Finally, Michael, some great stories in there, but you've had a long and multifaceted career. You're still working when many people your age have long since retired. Where do you get this energy from, and what is it that makes you still want to go out there and do it?
I'm not done with my life at all. My life is not. I've been writing, as you know. I've written a couple of books, self-published for the moment, so like I haven't edited properly, but they're out there. One is called Big Branches, Little Axes, and the other is called An Appointment with Sanity, which was written, by the way, in 1980 in a bar with 180 people in the bar at midnight, because I couldn't believe that I was in this kind of a place, having all the education that I had doing cleaning glasses. And I said, I want to go back to sanity. Sanity meaning walking through the woods at home, right?
So, well, you've always been like a great conversationalist,
yeah.
and a pretty good storyteller too.
Yeah. But there's wonderful instances of glory. When one of that happened in Limericks, a guy came in, very beautiful looking man, dressed, not beautiful, beautifully dressed man, fairly heavy set, and I always liked to introduce myself to the new customers. So I went to this guy and I said, "What's your name?" He said, "I'm Bud." And I said, "I'm Michael." And he said, "Where are you from, Michael?" I said, "I'm near Athenry in Galway." He said, "Oh, my people come from there." I said, "What's your last name?" He said, "Bud Franey." I said, "I know Franey's." And I said, are you outside of the town in the red house up near the railway bridge? He said, "Oh my God, yes, we are." I said, "Did you have an uncle, Mick?" He said, "I did." I said, "And did he have a patch over one eye?" I'm serious, this happened. Yeah. He said, "Who are you? How do you know this?" I said, "Not only do I know you, but I know your uncle. I know he got the patch in his eye." So I told him that my father and his uncle were cutting the cable wires to Dublin because Michael Collins was in the neighbourhood and they didn't want no information going to Dublin. So they cut the wires and one of the wires swung back and hit him in the eye. He lost his eye. That's your uncle. He cut me. This man was a big man. I was a thin guy then. He said, he squeezed me. Like, he said, "I can't believe it's happened to me here in this bar." He said, "Thank you so much for that story." And it was pathetic. It was like simple, great feeling. He became a regular customer. I think maybe he's still going in there. He never stopped coming in.
I think that was one of your biggest assets in Dooleys. I remember the first time I went in there,
yeah.
And you would spot somebody coming in for the first time, and the first thing you'd do is go over and introduce yourself. Sure. And
well, John, you come into my house.
Yeah.
So if someone walks into your house, do you not say hello?
Exactly.
They don't do. I could teach all these people out there in restaurants today. It could double your business if you go take the time out to go and say hello.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very unique.
Yeah.
I think it was the reason why Dooleys was so successful at the beginning. I think that kind of intimacy with strangers, you know, without being intrusive.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Michael, some great stories there.
And
thank you very much. You mentioned about your poetry. Okay, so do you want to just give us one of your poems?
This is a poem about school, meaning boarding school, where I went to boarding school for 5 years or so. When I left my village at summer end, it was a strange beginning. Going to a faraway boarding school where halls smelled of new baked bread and less precise odours. My bicycle shared a space in the bathroom where generations of new and old boys doubtless discovered themselves close to the Blessed Virgin in the chapel, where for me the writing on the wall should have been read sooner.